Good morning, you beautiful bunch of fuckers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It's Tuesday, January 13th. We are here live. It is time for the Power Hour. Phone lines are open. Jump in and join us. We'll be here for the next 2 hours or until we run out of calls, whichever happens first. 855-950-3835. It looks like we might have Eric here. Eric, is that you?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning. Where's Bruce today?
Bruce is somewhere on a boat. He's on a cruise.
That's not an excuse. They all have Wi-Fi now.
I think he deserves a little bit of time off.
I guess
that guy,
so.
I've never met. I mean, it still amazes me. I mean, he's going to be 77 in a couple weeks, February. Lincoln's birthday, I know.
Yeah.
Because of the picture in his. But it still amazes me. People will call me like on a Monday morning, like yesterday. I didn't have one yesterday, but it's happened in the past where they'll call and say, "Yeah, I was talking to Bruce yesterday or Saturday," and I'm like, "Wait, what? Yesterday was Sunday." And they're like, "Yeah, I just called to get your answer machine at like 11:30 at night." My God, man, give it a break.
Yeah.
No way I could. So,
I've talked about the fact that when I first started my business, and it was mostly accounting and taxes for owner-operators and small carriers, and I didn't have any money for marketing. So this was back when they had, every truck stop had a phone bank of 20 or 30 phones. And I'd make up these paper flyers with little tear-off phone numbers, and I'd stop at every truck stop when I was driving that I had time for, and I'd put these things up, and people would call me. And if the phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would answer it. I mean, whatever it took. But that didn't last forever. For Bruce, it does. I've traveled with him. He answers the phone every time it rings, no matter what's going on.
Yep, I can personally vouch for that. It doesn't matter where, when, how, why. As soon as that rings, he's picking it up. He's very, very good at that.
Oh, boy, is he ever. So he does deserve a break. We won't give him a hard time.
That actually reminds me, you said about the truck stops. I remember, this is going back a couple years ago now, but my dad and I, we spent a lot of time up on my camp in North Central PA. And there was, in Brookville, PA, there used to be a little truck stop diner that we'd stop at every once in a while. And every booth had its own jukebox and its own telephone.
Oh, yeah, I remember those days, too. Yeah.
I forgot about that. The other day, I was flipping through Facebook, and there was it was one of those retro places, things of the past or something, and it showed a truck driver eating his lunch on his telephone, flipping through the jukebox. And
right.
I'm like, man, that was a whole different world back then. That was big time.
Oh.
When you went into a place as a kid, your own jukebox and your own telephone, man,
yeah.
I was king of that was so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a time when there were no big truck stop chains. They were all independents. They all had not all, but many of them had good restaurants. They were kind of known for the restaurant. If you had a favorite truck stop back then, and my dad had several, it was about the restaurant. The one I really remember, and I'm trying to think, I think it was somewhere up on 90. You left Ohio, you go through that short part of Pennsylvania, then you're in New York. I think it might have been up there somewhere. Somebody might call or text me with this answer, some old timer that remembers it. It's called the Green Shingle. And the restaurant was really good, but it was one of those old school truck stops. And where I ended up growing up in Ohio, my family moved there because of a truck stop. It was on 14, which before the Ohio Turnpike was done, 14 was kind of the major route heading east into Pennsylvania and that out of Ohio. And right there in our little town, which was a really little town back then, was a truck stop called Pop's Truck Stop. And it had been around forever. It was one of those old school. And it was there most of the time I grew up. I think just about the time I was in high school or right after it finally disappeared. Yeah, that was a different time. Now there's all chains. There's no good restaurants at truck stops anymore. Phones are gone. Jukeboxes are gone. Now it's just a bunch of people fighting at the fuel island.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the truth.
Yeah.
I remember. Shoot, I lost my train of thought there. I was just going to say something about. There was one. Oh, I remember. There was a. It's called Flo Ann's. That's the name of it. My grandfather on my mom's side was he was a trucker his whole life. He had a couple trucking companies, and he knew where every good food there was. What he would ask people, like I remember him and my grandmother would take friends of theirs out like on the weekends, and he would specifically ask, like, what are you hungry for? What's your favorite food? And the guy might say Italian or hot roast beef sandwich or whatever it would be. He knew who had the best food of whatever.
Right.
We would get in the car. We would drive sometimes 2.5 hours to go to these restaurants to get the best of whatever that person wanted. And to this day, I can honestly say I can't remember one person ever saying that's not the best they ever had of whatever they wanted. Like it was so much different back then. But it's so funny now to think about that because everything is like instantaneous, right at our fingertips. Nobody drives 2 hours to go.
Well, and let's think about why. And I'll give you probably the last time I did that, and you'll recognize it. There was a time where that was unique. What happened, though, is if you became that good and that famous, you get bought and franchised, and then it all goes to hell. It's never the same, ever. Here's a really good example of that. The last time I drove that far for something like that was to go to the original Quaker Steak and Lube for wings.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, I could have gone to Buffalo and gone to the original place because I wasn't that far from Buffalo, but Quaker Steak and Lube was impressive. Those wings were outstanding in the original place. And the whole thing was so cool. It was an old gas station, and you walked, they had cars up on the lift, and you walked under those, and they had a dragster mounted to the wall. And I mean, it was just such a cool place. For a while, I was on their wall of flame for being able to eat 5 of their hottest wings. It was not easy either, and I suffered a lot to get that honor.
I forgot about that. We had one in Cranberry Township over here, and there was one in Sharon, one in Erie. There was a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I remember that wall of flame they had. That's funny.
Yeah, the wall of flame. You had to eat 5 of their hottest wings, and it was brutal. I think it took me 3 or 4 attempts before I finally succeeded.
My brother-in-law and I used to go out a lot together when we were younger, of course, and he was on there. And those he could eat, and to this day, he still can eat like anything hot. It really doesn't faze him. And I don't remember how many he ate, but he could eat them and not even a problem. We were at this hole-in-the-wall bar restaurant over here by Butler, PA. It was in Herman. It was called the Wide Receiver. And we were sitting there having a beer, and he said, I'm going to order some wings. I said, okay. So we put our order in, and the waitress said, how hot do you want them? He said, make them as hot as you want. She goes, okay. This guy's he's not a rookie. He's he's a veteran at food. And to this day, I still remember the chef sticking his head out through the back doors, the swinging doors they had going to the kitchen. And he said, who ordered the hot wings? And he raised his hand up. He said, you sure you want them as hot? He said, yeah, sure. He snickered. He went, okay, and walked in the back. That should have been our first clue.
Yeah.
I couldn't even touch them. They were that freaking hot. Like I put a little bit of sauce on my finger, and I tried to touch that on my tongue, and it
right
face.
Yeah.
I think he ate like 3 or 4 of them, and he was like the top. Nobody had ever eaten more than I think 1.
Right.
But he ate like 3 or 4. This was right years ago. That was the hottest thing I've ever eaten in my life. But it's funny how you find these places out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
You just don't expect to see that kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think isn't Quaker Steak and Lube now owned by one of the truck stop chains? I think it is. But they're awful. Most of the plate, they're just awful. Now, the other wing place, since we got talking about wings for some reason, we were talking about truck stop food. I grew up right near Kent State University, and there was a little wing place that popped up when I was in high school there, and wings were just really getting popular when I was in high school. One of the bars that gets the university towns are just loaded with bars that we would always drive down there. I lived in the next town. We would drive down there and go to the bars, all the college bars, and they would have nickel wing nights, $2 pitchers and nickel wings. Yeah. Boy, could you get drunk and full. Really, really cheap. Yeah, it was. That was always a treat. But then this little wing place popped up in Kent, in the town, and we called it BW3s. That's just what everybody referred to it as, was BW3s. And it was started by two college kids who were from Buffalo, and they couldn't get any good wings in town, so they started their own little wing place. You know what that place is today?
Buffalo Wild Wings?
Yep. BW3 started in a little town in Ohio.
Yep. That's amazing how these little places that just develop out of nowhere turn into such a big conglomerate, like Summit Racing.
Oh, absolutely. That's right there too. Yeah.
Yeah, right down the street from Ken, and he literally was selling parts right out of his basement. And now look at it.
It's a monster. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, what have you got today? We've got a call coming in, so we're going to get to Brad here in a minute.
So
what do you got going on?
I want to talk about repair versus replace. This is something that I deal with almost on a daily basis with people here, and I've been on both sides of the counter in this situation too. Like, you buy an older vehicle or an older house or whatever it may be. You have to come down to, do you want to repair it or replace it? And there's a lot of factors that go into making this decision to be smart as a business owner. And I'm going to use an example of a bicycle. It's a pretty easy one. If you have a really old bike, but the bike still rides, but let's say the chain pops off all the time or the tires go flat, then every time you have to fix it, it costs you money. Now you have two choices with this situation. First choice is to fix the bike. Now, in order to do that, number one, you're going to keep the bike that you already have, so you know the history of it. You're going to replace the broken parts, and it costs you a little bit of money every time, but not all at once. So the good thing is it's cheaper right now up front. You know what the bike is, of course, because you know the history, and there's no big monthly payments or anything like that hanging over your head. The bad thing is something else might break later, and it's probably not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Fixing it over and over does add up, and sometimes parts are hard to find. If you replace it, you get a brand new bike. Everything should work great. I mean, you paid a lot of money for it. And that's the other thing, is you did pay a lot of money for it, but you're breaking it down over time. You have a big monthly payment. There's going to be fewer breakdowns. The new bike has a warranty, and it is a new truck, or I'm sorry, a new bike. It looks nice. It feels nice, and it does cost a lot of money, but sometimes it may still break too. So when you're repairing stuff versus replacing stuff, you need to look at, the whole picture. And in a truck, of course, truck is a lot more expensive than a bicycle, but you want to look at it as it costs less.
Let me jump in right there. I don't disagree with you. And this is a topic I've had to deal with a lot over the years and still do. And some things have changed. The math becomes a lot more complicated on the truck for a lot of reasons. It's more expensive. The variables are much bigger. And it's a revenue generating, downtime now matters. This is probably one of the most complicated questions I get. Should I keep the truck I have, or should I get a new one? Well, first off, please don't call me with that question if you have no numbers, because it's impossible to answer unless we have really detailed numbers about fuel and maintenance. Everything else we can figure out. But we need to know what your fuel cost is on this truck, what your maintenance cost is. And we don't need to know just this year. You've seen this. Somebody gets to that point where, well, they just needed all new tires. Well, hell, that's $10,000 sometimes today, I think, or darn close to it. They needed a clutch. It was just that time. You know, maybe they needed all the fluids changed in the differentials and transmissions and an overhead. That's a lot of money you're going to be spending. But that's also stuff that's going to last several years. Maybe not the overhead, but everything else I mentioned is going to last several years. And they might say, oh, this truck's just killing me on maintenance. Well, yes and no. Let's go back further. Let's look at your maintenance cost over the last 3 years, not just this last year, because you spent a lot, but all that stuff's going to last a long time. So this gets really, really complicated. I'm with you. This is an important question, and you should work hard to answer it correctly. But let me go one step further, and then you can pick up where I leave off here. This got really screwed up because of emissions. Prior to emissions, this was a pretty easy thing to calculate. Emissions, we got to the point where you didn't even want the new truck because we had so many problems with them. So we got into this mode for about a decade of be very, very careful about buying a new truck. You could build a glider. We can do an in-frame on yours. We could do an out-of-frame. We need to keep these older trucks running. And we focused on that a lot for about a decade till we really figured out the emissions. The problem is there is a huge part of this industry that still thinks if you buy a new truck, you are just doomed to emission problems. And it's just not true anymore. These new trucks are outstanding. I'm impressed with almost all of them. Now, I have my favorites, but well, you could go make money with any of these if you spec them right and drive them right. So this is, I like this topic, but boy, this is a complicated topic.
Yeah, I'm keeping it more at the 1,000-foot view. You go right into the nitty-gritty.
Right. Yeah.
But I like general, like, and you know, talking with customers here, I see the frustration and the questions that are going through their head. Like, you know, can I afford this? What should I do? How do I need to approach this? These are just some general guidelines that you want to sit down, but absolutely you got to have the data. You have to have the information to make this decision sound. When you repair a truck, you know the history of it. You know it's a little bit of money out of pocket. Right. You may get it, you know, to extend out the road. There are situations where a new truck is the better option. You know, does your truck break down all the time? Is it, you know, there's downtime in there. There's lost loads in there. There's a lot of other incurring costs that people don't necessarily just look at up front. They may just look at the receipt from the repair shop and say, okay, this is going to cost me $5,000. Okay, but what about the load you lost? What about your downtime?
Right.
There's a lot of other costs. So you want to competition, but the reason why I brought this up was part supply. Brian and I were talking this morning about some of the big cam parts that we're having a really hard time finding. We're going to try to do some different ideas and options here to try to come up with them. But ever since emissions come out, and now the big thing ever since COVID, you know, there's still a part supply issue going on with a lot of these parts. And I'm seeing the trend too, where some manufacturers just don't want to support the older vehicles like they do the newer ones.
Right.
And I think it's because they just have more clientele with them, of course. But we wanted to express this idea, but also let our customers know that we are pursuing other options. You know, we're not giving up on this by any means. And that's completely the opposite. This is only going to make us double down and work even harder to try to find good suppliers for these parts and stuff. So there may be some times where it's frustrating when you own an older truck, but if it's what you want and it's what you need at the time, it's not a bad option. But you also want to look at the other side of the coin too. Is it time to get a new truck? Is it time to keep your old truck? You know, and even your status in life is going to make a major role in this too. Like I've talked to people that, you know, hey, I'm thinking about buying a new truck. Okay, well, give me a rundown. What are you doing? Well, I'm 60 years old. I plan on doing this another 2 or 3 years. Stop right there.
Exactly.
Don't even think about payment. You know, let's just fix your old truck. You only got a couple more years to hang it up. Now, I will tell those same people though, nobody truly retires in this industry. And Bruce and you have talked about this for years, and I've seen it more than once where a guy will say, you know what, I'm going to hang it up, I'm going to retire. Well, then they park their truck on the side of the barn or the side of their house. And in about 6 to 8 months, you know what, I think I'm going to take I just get out of here my legs a little bit. It's been a while since I've been in that truck. So that's another option too. But you want to make sure that you have all the data and the information. But here, you know, with us at Pittsburgh Power, we just express that we're not giving up on these older trucks by any means. We're just it's only going to make us work harder to try to help you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, let's throw in another factor. We could talk about this topic all day, and we could go through all the variables and all the what ifs, and it really is a complicated topic. Two things. One, I'll do this one quick. We had a call last week, I think it was Danny, who said, if I can figure out a new truck and know the fuel mileage will make the truck payment, I'll buy it. That is almost a slam dunk. If you can actually upgrade to a new truck that gets such better fuel economy than your current truck, and this is possible today. The average truck on the road is still getting under 7. 6.7, I think, was the latest number. You can spec new trucks today that'll get 10, spec'd right and driven right. That makes a truck payment. I mean, the math is there. It can happen. And if it does, that's almost a slam dunk. You'd be crazy not to at that point. Now you look at somebody like Steve Crone, who is getting, 10 out of his 2001 with a couple million miles on it or whatever he had on that thing. For him to upgrade was a tough choice. He did a lot of his own maintenance. But even he said, it's to the point where it's killing me on maintenance. His time, his money, you guys worked on it. He went and bought the new one. That was kind of an extreme, and that's part of why we could talk about this all day. There's all the extremes. Here's one I see, though. This is an absolute red flag, and I'll bet you've talked to people like this. The repair bill is $12,000. Or in today's world, could be $25,000, right? We're not talking about in-frames anymore. That there are just other repairs, or a couple of repairs where you're going to need $15,000 or $20,000, right?
Yep.
And they don't have the cash. But somebody will finance them on a new truck, and they go buy the new truck because of that. That's a horrible reason.
Yeah. When I sold cars, there was payment buyers and then there was car buyers.
Correct. Yep.
And you have to know if you're going to buy something to get your payment, that may not be the best option.
Who did the salespeople absolutely love?
The payment buyers.
The payment buyers, because all they had to ask was, what payment can you afford? Because they had enough financing options, they could just make it work.
Yep.
Not how much am I going to pay for this car? What's my payment going to be every month? And the salespeople love that. They'll make it work, and you'll be driving out in a new car.
Yep. It just means I have to take Bill off from Mellon Bank another 2 times on the golf course. That's all.
Yeah, that's right.
Like in the 90s, man. I don't know how many people I took out to lunch to try to get different rates from banks and everything. And you're exactly right. That's exactly how the game is played with that. So the other thing too is, you talk to a person that just bought the truck, or, it's an older truck they've had forever, and it might be a $10,000 or $12,000 repair, but you have to look at the value of the truck too.
Correct.
What is the market value? If your truck's worth $20,000, is it worth putting 18 into it?
Correct. Right.
Like look at it as a car insurance angle. If you have a $10,000 car and you hit a deer or get in a wreck, and there's $8,100 worth of damage, they're going to total the car.
Correct.
They're not going to put money in because it's ran as a business. And you want to be a smart business owner and smart business financial decisions, because unfortunately money dictates how we do everything. So you want to make sure you make the right and smart decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Good topic. What else you got today?
We have a full shop. We got a bunch of stuff going on, wide variety. I have an 18 Volvo in here. We're putting an OPS on and doing a new to me. We have a 95 Kenworth in here with an N14. We're looking for some coolant leaks. 16 Kenworth in here had a bunch of different emissions problems, came down to the batteries. We actually charged the batteries last night, load tested them separately, and they're all junk, unfortunately.
Wow.
And that's what was causing all these problems because of erratic voltage. And that's how sensitive, these newer emissions are to a lot of these things with voltage. So be careful, check your ground straps, make sure you have enough ground straps. You can never have too many, and just keep up on the maintenance of batteries, because batteries are probably one of the most overlooked items on a truck. When you do your pre-trip, you look around, tires, stuff. Nobody really checks the batteries. That's something you definitely want to spend a little bit of time to check out.
I wouldn't even say just overlooked, neglected. They're the most neglected part on the truck sometimes. Just not paying attention, and you can severely hamper your battery life if you don't take care of them, and they're not cheap. Now, since you brought up batteries, there's some interesting stuff going on in the world of batteries. Two that I've done some pretty deep research on recently. Did we talk at all last week about the solid state battery? Did I talk about that?
Yeah, you were saying there was a group in Finland that was stating that they have a solid state battery, but that was about all the more information we had at the time.
Yeah, and here's why nobody had any information. Usually, I mean, if you look at companies like Sony and Honda, and there's a bunch of companies that have been working on solid state batteries for about a decade, and they all kind of put out results and schedules. Like most of them are saying 2030. We might have something commercially viable, but we've known they've been working on them forever. Well, this company came out of nowhere. They had never published anything that I could find. They and still have not applied for patents on any of this. And yet they showed up at CES last week, the big consumer electronics show, and dropped a battery on the table and said, look, we have a solid state battery. And they put the stats out on this thing, and it's really impressive. Exactly what you expect from a solid state battery. And if we get one, it changes everything we've talked about with electric vehicles and electric everything else. This thing charges in like 10 minutes, full charge in under 10 minutes, huge storage capacity compared to our current batteries, has over 100,000 cycles of recharge without any degradation. The stats sound almost too good to be true, but that is what they expect out of a solid state battery when they finally can build one and perfect it, make it commercial. Those are the kind of stats they talk about. They also claim no exotic or rare earth metals of any kind. No, mining all kinds of crazy stuff to build these. It said they are built from common substances, even common in Finland. So it's not like we have to go to China or Iran or these crazy places where some of these metals exist and do all this mining. It almost sounds too good to be true, but I've done some deep research. I've followed some other people. Nobody can completely debunk it yet. And technically, it's already being sold in a motorcycle. And the stats on the motorcycle are pretty darn impressive. So that's interesting. If that occurs, everything changes. Now, we've had lots of stories like this in the past, and they turn out to be vaporware. This very well could. Maybe it's an impressive battery, but not exactly what they claim it to be. I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. What was the other battery story I just saw recently? I've kind of researched the Tesla wall and Tesla solar. They have roof tiles that look fantastic, but they're really solar. Tesla's got some pretty impressive stuff. But the basic setup of a Tesla wall, their wall, the battery they call the wall or whatever they call that thing, Tesla Powerwall, I think it is. One of those, and one would not be enough to run our power needs at this house. I'd need 3, I think. One I could use out at the farm, much smaller house, a lot less power. It would work there. But here I would need 3. I need a lot of solar, and I would still struggle in the wintertime with solar. And with one battery Powerwall, I need three. One setup, I'm looking at about $15,000. That doesn't include any solar. So the price has just been out of reach. Just doesn't even make any sense. Unless you're just, you've got money to burn. The systems are really nice. John Walco and I talked one time about a project of mounting a Tesla Powerwall on the back of a truck. That would have been an interesting. I had plenty of power then. And then. Hi, I'm Kevin Rutherford. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe or leave a comment below. It really helps us get the show out to more people. If you'd like to get the show, the full show, ad-free, you can sign up with the link below.